Hello, my name is Levi Crane, and I've just been watching this documentary called Time for School, um, comparing the education of 7 kids around the world, 7 different countries and cultures. And it's been really interesting, actually. I've really enjoyed it. I think it's taught me some things that I hadn't considered before. It was interesting to see, first of all, just the landscape of Afghanistan. I didn't realize that there was green grass there or mountains with snow on them. So that was kind of interesting. One thing that was kind of interesting to see is that all of the children, most of them anyway, seem to be pretty excited about education in the beginning parts. Most of them had big dreams and goals that they wanted to accomplish in life. Many of them wanted to be teachers, is something that was pretty common that I was able to see, which is interesting. Interesting that that's the goal that they had, was to become a teacher. Maybe this is with some sort of a desire to help other people. I don't know. It's kind of a humbling thought. But just kind of looking at the first girl that we watched in Afghanistan, it basically in Afghanistan, 1/3 of the people, 1/3 of the students or the boys and girls aren't enrolled in school. And a large majority of those are the girls. And a lot of this is because the Taliban is attacking their education. For some reason, they don't want them to be enrolled in school. It said that Afghanistan was one of the most dangerous places on earth, and that oftentimes they would have, they're oftentimes in war. And under attack, and they oftentimes are full of fear that they're going to that there could be a person that could come to school with a bomb or light the school on fire, or different things like that. But it was cool to see that they're human beings just like us, and that they have a lot of similarities to us. That's one thing I had never thought of Afghanistan in that light before. I usually not necessarily had the best feelings toward Afghanistan or Iraq. But so that was kind of eye-opening to me. And so the next thing, the next person that we took a look at was Jefferson in Brazil. And in Brazil, just a quick stat, basically the poor people in Brazil only get about 4 years of education. That's usually the average, what they're able to get. And one thing that was kind of interesting is it showed Santa Claus come to Brazil in a helicopter, which was kind of cool. But in Christmas time in Brazil, the theme or the motto is basically Christmas without hunger. And so to get into this little show that they have, or the celebration, the pay is to bring 2 or 4 pounds of food. And so that was kind of cool. And the only presents that they get are from Santa Claus. And so that's kind of interesting as well. Now, Jefferson, he comes from an interesting situation. His mom is a single mom working to provide for her 4 children. And they live in the slums of Brazil. And so her worry is keeping her son out of the war zone, because over there they live in an area where drugs are huge, and the police are trying to fight basically the drug dealers and try and keep it out of the area. And so oftentimes they would have invasions, and bullets would just be flying everywhere. and so that was pretty scary. But one thing they have in Brazil is something called Bolsa Familia, and that's basically a program that pays for school as long as they go to school, as long as they stay enrolled. And so that's something that's kind of interesting. In Brazil, 2/3 of the kids drop out by 8th grade. And oftentimes, around that time, the young men, the boys, will become drug dealers. And it talked about how Jefferson's mom was worried that her daughter would become a prostitute, because that's very common over there as well. And one thing that she did to keep her son out of trouble was an after-school program, which was church-based, which helped him to stay out of trouble, and so that was good. But one sad thing is that he was not able to graduate 5th grade, even though he worked really hard and got great grades. He wasn't able to do that because they felt like it would be better for him to stay in 5th grade for another year, and so that was really hard for him. We took a look at Neeraj in India, and she had to work all day, and while the men would just lay around and do nothing, because that's their custom over there. The women work and the men don't do anything. And she would go to school at nighttime, but unfortunately they shut that down, and so that was probably the most education that she's going to be able to get, and her future will be pretty much determined based on what her family is able to do, and she'll pretty much just be a sheep herder and or a goat herder. But we took a look at Ken in Japan, and he was super driven, had lots of goals, and he worked really hard. He wanted to become a baseball player when he was older. And one thing I noticed about him is that he just was super motivated and worked really hard in his studies and in everything that he did, pretty much. One thing that's interesting about Japan is their enrollment, their secondary education enrollment is nearly 100%, which is amazing. And so Ken came from a pretty educated family. His mom worked in the education department, and his dad was an engineer. And so he definitely had an advantage over many of the other kids that we're able to look at. But one cool thing is he didn't miss a day of school when we were watching this time period that he was in. And one thing that they do is they clean the school at the end of each semester, which is kind of cool. It's amazing to see that kind of determination. But so yeah, these are some thoughts that I had in this video. I thought it was pretty good, actually, really enlightening. So thank you, and see you later.